you might say you could spend that money more wisely in a different way. And so what we're saying to you is, don't worry about that. Don't think about that coming out of your allocation of funds. Just take it as read that that will be taken care of. So it's trying to avoid barriers in your minds as well as elsewhere. So how to participate. So people can either submit a proposal, or they can attend a programme or a workshop or a gateway event. They can watch seminars online. I'll talk more about the Talks Elsewhere scheme, and there's the newsletters. So submitting a proposal. Okay, as John has said, proposals can be for 1 or 4 or 6 months. Okay, take that very loosely, loose interpretation of that. And proposals may be submitted twice yearly. Now, there is a possibility, the jury is still out here, but I'm just going to put this out as a flag. There's a possibility that we might not run, or we might not promote, or it might not quite happen as we normally do the January submission round this year, just because we have so many proposals in the pipeline. And we might run it, but without promoting it, or so if you were to put something in, then you're at the head of the queue, ahead of the people who submitted in July, something like that. But we're just aware that we've got quite a lot of airplanes that haven't landed yet, to use my former analogy. So I just want to put that out there just to manage expectations. Okay, very important. Proposals should come from a demographically varied group. We need to, that you're fine. I would always say to people, you need to make sure you've got proper UK representation. You've got that covered. But also you probably want to have some international representation as well. The competitive peer review process, right. Now then the acceptance rate is approximately 50%. Now, lots of those proposals will have gone through multiple iterations in order to get to that point. Typically, I would say the iterations have reduced in recent years, but that's probably because we're doing a lot more work with you prior to submission. So the proposals that are coming in much tighter. Right, I'm going to just take a break from this for a second. So they should be submitted electronically via proposals, which I'm going to show you in just a second. And they should include the scientific case, the proposed programme structure. So this is really what you want to take on board here.
Christy, sorry, can I just butt in? I think, Yassine, did you want to ask a question?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, just for clarification. So the demographically varied proposal pool. So so when you mean demographically varied, does it include career stage? So should we aim to include junior?
Yeah, I'm going to say the answer to that is yes. So it doesn't have to be, but should I tell you why? So there was an example of 2 programs we had running in parallel at the same time. And one of them had very, very, very senior stage in their career, huge name organisers. And one of them had very, very early career, relatively speaking. They were all tenured or thereabouts, but they were very much at a junior stage in their career. And John Toland and I would hold organisers meetings with them, and we'd quite often have one and then followed by the other. And so the more senior organisers would come into the room and they'd go, I'm just loving the energy that other programme have. They've got this vibrancy and energy, and they're saying we say, well, you don't have enough early career researchers. You need to invite some more early career researchers to your programme. And they're going, yeah, I feel a little bit out of touch. I don't quite know the early career researchers in the way that I used to. Maybe my PhD students would be able to tell me, so going down the food chain. And then the next group would come in and go, and we'd say, actually, this is really good, but I think that, you should be inviting X, Y, or Z from your field. And they're going, yeah, but we don't really have personal contacts with X, Y, and Z, so we'll lean on our scientific advisory board to see if they would invite so-and-so to come on. So they each wanted a little bit of what the other had. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we have precedence of both. It's so back to what I always said, I will sit on the fence for every question you ask me. It'll seem like I sit on the fence, but actually you want the best of both worlds. So spanning the spectrum is best.
Thanks.
John, are you able to keep an eye on questions for me? Because I can't look at slides and questions at the same time, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'll try to. Yeah, I think I did that relatively quickly, as it turned out, though.
Yay. So a detailed scientific case and outline your proposed program structure. A list. Oh, sorry, I'll just go back again. Sorry. A list of the proposer's prior experience organising similar events. A demographically balanced list of potential participants, how the programme would benefit UK mathematics, and a stated commitment to improve. Now, I've put here gender balance within the community. Actually, I mean diversity broadly there. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you see if I can do this. I'm going to try unsharing this. I don't know what you can see. I hope you can't see how many documents I have on my screen. Possibly you can. Right, I'll go to this next. So this is the page on our website, submit a proposal. So to tell you where to get that, so that's programs.
I'm not sure we can see this just yet. Possibly, I'm still seeing your slideshow.
Oh, brilliant! So I'm going to stop share and I'm going to start sharing again. That's lucky you couldn't see my screensaver then. That's good. Right, share. Okay, so submit a proposal. Okay, so you go to the I&I homepage. Then there's the tab programs and events, scroll down, submit a proposal. Okay, and this talks you through, this will say, see, we can see down here, this is really essentially summarizing what I've just put here. So saying what you need to be putting in, but in much more detail. And crucially, it has a link to here, proposals.newton.ac.uk, which is the database. Okay, now, you don't need to know about submitting a follow-on proposal. So, I have now, I think I just opened up here, right. Now, can you see, are we on a different tab now? Can you see the tab we were on before? Or am I on a different one?
We're on submission overview.
Perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to do. So what I've done is I have created here a demo proposal only because other proposals aren't in the public domain, so I can't show them to you because that would be confidentiality things. So this is when you're creating a program. So you would go to that proposals, you would log in using your Isaac login details, by the way, and you would log in. Hopefully John would have created a proposal. And then, John, you and I would need to make sure that the proposers are all mapped onto their Isaac profiles. And they go, okay, so the Victoria that you've identified here is the Victoria that is identified here in Isaac. And so match up the two. And then when Victoria logs in, she can then see the same proposal. Okay, so that's how there's a little bit of jiggery pokery required there, but not much. So assuming you can all log in, it will say Maths for Social Good or something up here. And then what you'll see is this is an overview page. So you can see now all I've done is I've added the title, but I can go to the various different sections. So I could either click on the tabs up here for the sections, or I can click on go to section. So let's go for this go to section. And okay, and then we'll just add in the various information that we want to do. So it's pretty obvious and standard. John, I should remember this. Remind me how many months or the duration that you're looking at.
We're considering 6 months, but I think it's something that's, yeah, we will discuss.
Let's just put that for the moment.
Yeah.
And then you type in your abstract, then say here, so you would say, okay, we're looking at the mathematical sciences, and we're also looking at the economic and social sciences, and you could tick any other boxes that you want. The reason I've got those, you might notice that these boxes align perfectly to the UKRI Research Council interests. And that's so that when I'm talking to ESRC or whatever, I can say, and we have this many programs coming up which are in your area of interest. This would obviously be a first submission that you're putting in, and then additional information. So you could say whatever you wanted to say, when you wanted it to run ideally, or something like that.
Christy, just out of interest, can I put it as a first submission? I mean, I guess it will be significantly different to the thing that I submitted before, but
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I think that this is, so what I would do, that's a really good question. I would say this is the first full submission, and then under additional information, say, I, John, submitted something back in whenever it was. And you can just put some context there. IDA contacted me and suggested that I ...
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. That's the sort of thing that I would think would be quite useful there. And then you can do save that. Okay, some pages, sometimes there's a save option and sometimes it automatically saves, and it's not entirely obvious to me, but if in doubt, save. That's kind of what I reckon. So propose the details. So here, obviously this is saying that I'm a proposer on this one because I've created it. So John, you'll do that. If we added people, then you'll be able to see, you can change who you want to be the diversity lead. So the diversity lead is going to be the person who will hold to the fire, feet to the fire for the rest of you and say, actually, are we being properly, are we taking diversity into consideration at every single step? And so a particularly important stage, and Megan will really understand this, is suppose you have had your program accepted, you've invited everybody, and you get 3 cancellations, and those cancellations you asked to fill with new people. And the 3 cancellations were female, and you go to the top of your list and you see, well, the next 3 people are male. And so you fill the 3 female applicants with the 3 male applicants, and suddenly your diversity is looking much more skewed. So the diversity lead, I'm hoping, is going to be the person who's going to really keep an eye on that and make sure that actually you don't unwittingly suddenly lose the diversity that you had. And then things that are useful to see, this will keep a track of gender balance and who's UK based. And if we go back to the submission overview, you will see that diversity lead hasn't been added, and it could have put up a thing saying not enough people from the UK. Obviously, I'm the only person there, and so it's quite happy with the gender right now, and it's quite happy with UK participants because I'm the only organizer and I'm female. So it's not putting a flag up there. But if you didn't have that balance right, it would put a flag up there. Similarly, when you add your potential participants, if you which you can add using a spreadsheet. Now, so this is useful to notice this here at the moment, because you can add your spreadsheet in bulk. So try, and when you create your spreadsheet in the first instance, use the columns that are here, because it'll make your lives much easier. So obviously all the things that you want to see, the name, the home institution, gender, whether or not they've confirmed interest. So if you're looking to submit in January, that might be tighter for getting confirmed interest. On the other hand, a lot of people actually want a break from their families over Christmas, and so actually are more proactive on checking their emails and responding to things than not. So that's adding that. Let me go back now to the proposers. You can also add a scientific advisory committee. Not everybody does that. It's not compulsory, but it's quite useful to have. Then you would upload a PDF document which talks about your scientific case. And again, there's a really detailed walkthrough of the sorts of things that we would expect to see within that. And then slightly overlapping with the scientific case, because you might want to put this in there, but you might not, is talking about the program structure. So there's a real danger. So the programs that don't succeed are the programs which are just a succession of workshops and no building on them in between. You don't want your program just to be a succession of workshops. You want there to be really exciting things happening in between. So here you can talk about what the workshops are going to be, but also say, think about what you're going to do in between, whether you're going to have some seminars. The HHH program had a fantastic thing called the Gong. Was it called, Megan, was it called the Gong Show? I don't know if Megan's still with us. And everybody got together.
Sorry.
Yeah, was it the Gong Show that they ran once a week? I think it was. And they had beer and talks.
Beer and talks, yeah. The Gong Show.
And the talks were something like, were they 15 minutes long, Megan?
Oh, they weren't very long at all. I think they ranged from 15 to 30 minutes, but they weren't long.
And it was absolutely strict. They had a timer, and once you'd finished your talk, but that meant that everybody got to talk. So back to the earlier question, everybody got to speak, and usually on multiple occasions. And that was a really good way to make sure that everybody was engaged. And of course, you can talk about having beer nights once a week. Remember, there's a social budget. There's a really generous social budget. So some programs have beer and pizza night once a week. Some programs have tea and cakes once a week. It tends to, and often these are organized by early career researchers actually as well. And it's a really good thing because it means that the organizers don't have to do the work, and the early career researchers get to put it on their CVs. I was the person who, throughout the I&I program on BLA, I was in charge of organizing this seminar series. And, that's it's a win-win-win-win-win for that. So think about your program structure, related meetings. So right, let me talk about this. If there's no related meetings going on in your area, it probably says it's not a hot topic. If there are too many related meetings going on in your area, then the scientific steering committee might think, well, actually there's too much going on. People will be torn too thin. People won't actually be coming and attending. So you obviously have to be honest, because if you don't list related meetings and one of the referees goes, well, I know that this meeting is happening here, then that doesn't look good and they'll hold it against you. But on the other hand, so be honest about all of them. But so you just want to, you can't necessarily, unless you're organizing them yourselves, you can't control for what's happening elsewhere. But what I'm trying to say is, it's good to have enough activity, but not too much activity, if that makes sense. External funding, if you can raise any external funding, that always looks good.
Sorry, can I just butt in for a sec? Because I'm aware that I know at least Yassine has to go soonish. I don't know, is there anything, Yassine, is there anything that you want to raise now before you have to leave? And I just want to stress as well that please do engage. Otherwise, I think Richard and I will be, and Victoria and I will be in the Sococo room most days. So if you do want to just pop in and have a chat, log on and we'd love to chat to you. Is there anything you wanted to ask or suggest or have any input?
No, I hope to join into some of the meeting on Thursday.
Fantastic.
So then we can catch up then.
Great. Okay.
And obviously I'm a great proposer of doing networks.
Yeah.
So that would be my angle, but we can talk more about that later.
Yeah. I'm going to follow up with the email then on that.
All right. Well, I better say goodbye to get ready for the interviews.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. I don't know if anyone else has to go at the hour or.
I will have to leave, unfortunately, in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So John, that raises a question. Am I going into too much detail here, or is this useful landscape here?
It is useful, but I guess maybe I'm just thinking because I think realistically, we're not going to be able to do the breakouts within 10 minutes, right? So I think if we did that, so let's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I kind of realised that I'd given you more information than possibly it was difficult to know where to start.
No, I know, I understand. I suggest. Does anyone else have to go? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So I suggest we carry on, and maybe what we'll do is as the breakouts, we probably won't need to break out into separate groups. I think there'll be sufficiently few of us to sort of have to initiate the discussion. So Michael, is there anything that you wanted to raise now?
I had some thoughts. One thing is that there is already a huge community of computational sociologists. There's even a section in the American Sociological Association called Mathematical Sociology. And it's a very old community that we should definitely involve. You have me, I'm a member of that community. So this is something that that you should definitely do. So we are not reinventing the wheel here, and you want to make sure that people are not offended if you act as if you did. And there's also no need to claim this. And the other thing, I totally see that we need to have strong arguments about why mathematics plays a role in solving societal problems. So what we need to do is we need to demonstrate that there are certain things, certain problems we cannot solve without a mathematical approach, without a rigorous approach. And I think this is what each of us has examples there. Yeah? And I think we can make a strong proposal if we just refer to the literature, give examples of where things happen that without a mathematical model, we would not have understood it, or without some mathematical tool, we would not have been able to understand and propose solutions.
Thanks very much. I mean, I think you're coming for at least some of Thursday as well, Michael. So I think
yes, so in the morning I will be there for the whole meeting.
Great, fantastic.
And thanks for the invitation. I really
no problem. Great to have you. Yeah. Okay. As I said, let's let Christy, if you're happy to carry on, let's continue. If we start getting towards...
I do think that this is going, we're quite an early stage of discussing what we'd like to do in a way, and maybe starting, I feel like we're getting too into the details of the proposal, and maybe, well, that's my feeling anyway. I suppose I'm quite keen to
okay. I mean, that's a fair point. I think mining Christy for her sort of gems of insight into the things that make it successful or not, I think is quite good. I don't know. I mean, if there's anything, I mean, I agree on the kind of, I think in terms of the nitty gritty of the going through the submission process, I appreciate you, Christy, you're using that to kind of highlight key important points. I don't know, perhaps should we try and summarize that then? Is that all right? Or is there anything, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think actually I've got to there already, but so all I really now I'm going to give you here for this one thing is I've just got this diagram here, which shows you the pathways to acceptance. So really what you need to, so essentially a flow chart. So development of proposal, we get the proposal, then there's the audit and quality assurance. So that is essentially, we get the referees reports. Then it goes to, so January. So you really want to have a time frame to get, so know roughly how it is. So it's usually about 6 months between submission and when you kind of hear from something. So it goes to, we receive the proposal, it goes out to external referees, then comes to the scientific steering committee. And then if it's approved, it goes to the management committee, and it's only after the management committee that you would then know whether it had been successful or not. So that's essentially, so you've got a few hurdles. So you've got the submission of it, then the referees reports, and that's going to be at least 5 referees for each proposal. And then there will be the SSC, who will then debate intention programs against one another. And then if it gets accepted by the scientific steering committee, if there's a recommendation to accept it, then it goes to the management committee as well. And normally that things just go straight through the management committee, but of course the management committee are much more mindful of resources at this point in time because of the multiple programs. So, and of course things can iterate and go round and round. So there's there could be an outright rejection and outright acceptance, or a resubmission and go back to the dialogue. And then usually there's a 2-year lag between when a program gets accepted, or round about that, between the program being accepted and it running. So that's essentially was really where I wanted to get you to, was to understand what needs to go into it and what path is going to take you to there, and then to be mindful of some of the content that we want you to have in it and why we want you to have it in it. So that was really where I was trying to get to.
Does anyone have any questions then for Christy, given what she said?
So my take is that I just wanted to do a brain dump for this stage. So just to set you on path for the beginning of the week. And then my take is that actually I'm going to be very much playing a passive role throughout the whole of the rest of your time doing this workshop. So I'll be here for you, particularly if you ping me an email. Sometimes I won't even be here, but just you ping me an email and say, Christy, can you join us for X, Y, and Z? Otherwise, it's just up to you guys to use me as a resource as and when you need me.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I have quite a lot of questions actually.
Great. I think yeah. I mean, I'm sure some of yours will overlap with us. I mean, are they specifically aimed at Christy?
Yes.
great. Then let's take this opportunity.
I mean, there's sort of direct. I mean, the thing is, I feel that we should have discussed what we're going to do first before we do these. But I can take perspectives, some questions from the perspective of what I would do. I mean, I think that the strength of our perspective is there's a few things we can go all out on, which are not going to be in most proposals. For example, we can go all out on gender diversity and also ethnic diversity in a way that no other program can possibly get near. So if we come with a proposal that has sort of 70% women and 30% ethnic minorities, what's the reaction to that? This is a very direct question, but I think that it links into what you're saying. What's the positive sides of that, and what's the negative sides of that, or how would that work?
Okie dokie. So from my perspective, that's just absolutely perfect. Now, how am I going to say this?
If you don't invite an important professor who reviews it,
yeah, you've got to have senior people there, and the reality is that you just have to demonstrate. You have to work. I hate this with diversity. You have to work harder to demonstrate that somebody is good when they tick a diversity box, and that's just the reality of how it is. And so, and actually, we're playing. It's much less hard than it used to be, but all I'm saying is give me all the ammunition that you can to demonstrate that all of your people are absolutely awesome, because I do encounter there being some prejudice sometimes. So just work with me on this, and that's brilliant.
Well, no, that sounds really
also
good.
Maybe, okay, David, here's another thing. What about, which can really add strings to your bow, what about if you can say, and we recognize that our ratios will be much stronger than other programs, and we want to work with other programs. We're interested in Maths for Social Good, so we would be interested in working with the other programs in other fields to help them think about how they could improve their diversity. So for instance, I might, if I was doing scheduling, I might be deliberately provocative, and I might put you in parallel if there was a program coming in at the same time on mathematics, and I might deliberately schedule you at the same time, so that some of what you have rubs off on that community, and they actually think, you know, we should be doing some more of this. So I think you've got actually a very, very strong card there to say that actually this could be not good just for your community, but actually you would try and corrupt the other communities, take them prisoner while you're at it. So that's the card that I would really recommend you playing.
That's interesting. I think a related question to that, it goes back to what came up on when we had the chat on the Slack group, and it came up that it should be proper mathematics or whatever, this thing. And I've been on several of these things, both at the Newton Institute and the Meta Glefler and I've found that what this actually means, this proper mathematics thing, is you get some really old Fields Medal winner to be in your thing, and you get a few of them who sort of will agree to come along, and then they say, yeah, that's fine, we'll do that. And so, I mean, I suppose I'm being provocative here, because I think that, you know, when we would be arguing for these people, these younger, more diverse people, they couldn't possibly have this same kind of mathematical aura as the old people. But do you think we can make that argument, or is it a really bad strategy from the start?
No, but I say balance is really good, because actually often, I mean, we all, you know, we've all been there in, you know, so when early stage of my career, and I've been in rooms with people who are just obviously truly brilliant, and maybe I don't necessarily have the same mathematical approach as them, but I can see what's really good about them and then take some of my own stuff. So having a bit of both is really good, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, so you want to get the first thing you want to do is get your proposal accepted, and John didn't get his proposal accepted last time. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that you get your proposal accepted, and you can nuance the amount of time each of the people are spending there when when you've got it accepted and are running a program, you know, but
Yeah.
just don't lose the program for.
Okay, but
Yeah.
you're saying
Give me ammunition to start with.
you're saying do throw in these Fields Medal winners then, even if they're not going to come in the door. That's what you're implying there, or am I?
I don't think I said that entirely, Dave. I'm saying that you'll need to, for our scientific steering committee, you'll need to give evidence that you've got sufficient mathematical clout in there. And sometimes that means a name that people recognize. And the trouble with putting in brilliant, more junior people is sometimes they're not names people recognize.
Yeah.
And so it could be the case that you throw all of these people onto your scientific advisory board, some really major people onto your scientific advisory board, and the scientific advisory board, you're not saying they're definitely coming, but they're engaging with the program. And so maybe that's your halfway house, David. I'm slightly talking on the fly here, but I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm wondering, how can I accommodate what I've heard you say, whilst at the same time trying to make sure that your proposal gets accepted? And that
That's
could
good.
be a way that we could tension the two, potentially.
I have another line of questioning, but I don't want to take up her.
Can I just ask a related question to that? Is, I mean, how narrowly is someone's sort of affiliation to maths sort of judged? So we were sort of looking through when we were looking at potential invitees, and we know lots of people who do maths. Not all of them are in a maths department. Not all of them would put mathematician on their business card. Does it come down to what the scientific steering committee recognizes as a mathematician, or will it? Because
Maths is
I mean,
hugely broad.
yeah, because I mean, I, for example, have had all sorts of problems with people saying, we searched your papers on Mathsci.net and we didn't find any of them. So is that going to become a problem if?
No, I mean,
lots of
likewise, so my
people-
background is theoretical computer science, do you know, so, and that's a perfectly reasonable and acceptable branch of mathematics. It's just, it's in a adjacent, and it's, you know, huge mathematical content, but it's not publishing necessarily in straight mathematical journals, you know, so it's recognized that people are across all different fields, and we have people from all different departments. And, you know, there are some fields where you couldn't even guess where somebody's going to be. Take Earth Sciences. If we got an Earth Sciences program, you've got absolutely no idea. I mean, well David, take Oxford, you know, Earth Sciences as a degree in Oxford. I mean, you know, you could have anybody from one of, you know, a dozen different departments teaching that course. And there's lots of maths content across there. So it's exactly the same for us. We're department agnostic, essentially, so long as people are doing interesting mathematics.
In a sort of related sense, I mean, are there big names who are possibly count against us? I mean, I can think in our that, you know, there's some people who publish in notorious journals all the time, but won't necessarily, you know, they might sit in math or physics departments, but I think some people might not think as highly of what they do as someone else. So I don't know. Is there scope for there also to be, you know, because I mean, I can certainly think of some really big names who would be interested in coming to this, but then I could also imagine some of them might be a bit contentious from the maths point of view. Is that a risk?
We have had examples of programs where referees have said, if you're inviting this person, I'm not attending. And the scientific steering committee being so pragmatic about it and going, yeah, well, of course, he's going to say that, you know, that just goes without saying. They're arch rivals, they don't get on. And it's up to the program organizers to have one of them at this point in time and one of this at this point in time, and it would be great if they get both of them, but let's not have them at the same time. So the scientific steering committee tend to be reasonably open to things like that, and sometimes we've had things in particularly if it's a second different iteration of a program, and you know, so somebody has been slated in the first one, and they go, well, actually, possibly the reason that this person is being slated is because there's a lot of tensions within the community. But you'll find that these referees thought this person was great, and these people didn't think they were great, and this is not a reflection on the individual; it's a reflection on the tensions in the community. Oh, John, you're on mute.
Thanks. Sorry, I was just catching up on the messages there because I think Michael left. So yeah, but we have Jess. So hello, Jess. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm all right. Sorry to be dashing in and out. COVID.
It's okay.
What
I guess
what
that's
can I
part of
say?
what these things are good for. So yeah. I mean, so Christy has just given us an overview. We've now got down to question asking. We were planning on doing a breakout, but I think there's sufficiently few of us. We can probably just manage the discussion amongst us. Is there any other questions for Christy that we should ask now, or should we move on and try and evolve our discussion amongst us?
I've
And
got
then,
more.
yeah, okay, yeah, please, David,
Victoria,
go
had one.
ahead.
Victoria had one too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's also related to the questions that we have already asked. I think one of the things that we kind of always were wondering is actually what counts as new maps, because I think like that was one of the other things that we thought is necessary for a successful application, is that we can suggest like how we can contribute to the evolution of new maps or development of new maps. And so we would like to know maybe more specifically what that actually means, or like what counts as new maps for a new field within mathematics that we may suggest.
That's such a good question, Victoria. And I would say that the Scientific Steering Committee are much more open currently. Of course, it's a cycling committee, and we've got a new director will start in September, and you know, who knows what their steer will be on different things. But I would say that the interpretation of what is new and what is pushing boundaries is much more flexible now and open to interpretation than it used to be. So the Maths of Forensic Science programme that got accepted, if it had been submitted 3 years beforehand, I don't think it would have been accepted. And in fact, actually it got accepted on its third iteration. And probably that was, certainly the proposal improved across iterations, but I think also it was a recognition, it was a change in acceptance of what could be interpreted. And that was the most controversial proposal I've seen discussion-wise for the Scientific Steering Committee. That was the one that absolutely divided the audience. I mean, literally, there were people saying reject outright, and there were people who were saying accept outright. Biggest heated debate for that one of everything I've seen. So that's what I'm saying. You guys have your work cut out, but we just need to do what we can to work with you. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, we just have to work with you then to try to.
Yeah, so it's better. It's not as rigid as it was a few years ago, is the answer. So you've just got to need to be creative in thinking how you're saying you're pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
Just on a sort of related note, I mean, I guess I imagine that if we have some participants who are clearly people who are likely to go away and prove theorems, if we have some, you know, if we, I don't know, I mean, I think that's an important factor. I don't know, is it worth trying to intersect with disciplines that are, you know, closer to pure mathematics, or disciplines which are, you know, they're places where it's clear that rigorous mathematics is undertaken? Are those the kinds of signals that we can use to, because obviously, you know, the proposal will talk at fairly high level about the actual specifics, right? But I mean, so in a sense, you know, is it the communities that we involve, and is it through those kinds of signals that we can demonstrate that we're the mathematical content of the program?
Again, that's very, very difficult. That's a good way to do it. But you could actually, I'm now just thinking about this, is you could demonstrate in your proposal that you believe that the mathematical opportunities are there. That could be quite a useful way to spin it. You believe that the mathematical opportunities are there, and you can see how the questions that you are asking can make interesting challenges to mathematics. But the mathematics community are not yet aware of them. So one of the objectives of your program is to engage those mathematical communities who don't yet recognize the mathematical challenges from your community. So, and maybe they wouldn't attend for a whole program, but maybe you could lure them in for a workshop or two just to pull them into the field. And that's doing exactly what you're trying to do. That's pushing the boundaries of mathematics, and it's drawing those mathematicians in who don't yet realize that you have interesting challenges to what they're thinking. So the forensic science. So actually, there were a whole load of Bayesian statisticians who were doing stuff who had no understanding that actually the forensic science community had some really, really interesting questions to pose to them. And because they hadn't really kind of thought about it, and it was only by being dragged into the room and being exposed to the actual dirty forensic science, the really actually what was going on in the courtroom, that they went, actually, there really is some interesting multivariate issues going on here that we hadn't quite factored in. So it absolutely pushed the boundaries of mathematics, but the statisticians hadn't realized a priori the challenges that they were going to be asked. So opportunities, that's a good way to pitch it.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can certainly do. Thanks, that's a really good answer.
I have one more question. It goes in a slightly different direction, if that's okay. I think the other thing we can go all out in is like this gateway thing. Is that good to go all out in the application, or does it weaken it because like it becomes all sort of about communication with the public?
That's great. And engagement. So one of our remits is public engagement. So you could say, you are the program that absolutely engages with diversity. You're the program that absolutely engages with public engagement. And that's awesome. I mean, that's really, really good.
Okay.
Back to EBD, the landscape, it was called evidence-based decision making. It was working title, so that's why it's EBD, and then it changed name. So its current name has nothing to do with EB&D, and I never quite remember, but it's the landscape decision-making one. So that was co-branded as an INI and gateway program. And that's something you could choose to do, but I think you could be bolder. I think you could actually, so if you were feeling less confident in your mathematical content, you could brand yours as a co-branded one. And or if you were, but I think what I'm hearing you guys saying is there actually is some pretty cool and exciting mathematical content and stuff to be done that the mathematical sciences community doesn't yet know about. And so be bold, you could go down that route and certainly do lots of stuff with the gateway. So you can have huge sections in your proposal about what you're doing with the gateway. But my steer is actually be bold and say there really is enough mathematics here and we're going to make it a proper full INI program with associated gateway activity rather than having it a co-branded program.
One thing that
my personal opinion.
Yeah, okay. One thing that I kind of felt strongly with the gateway is that I think it should be exchanged. So rather than pitched as a math transfer, because I think what's really important here is for mathematicians to learn some social sciences as well, right? So I mean that's something I think it would be good to perhaps.
Oh, completely. Did I say?
I guess the gateway, from my perspective, it's always had this impression of like outreach in the sense of.
No. It's totally bidirectional. This is a bidirectional gateway.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Is that word transfer? Is that a word you use?
Yep.
I think exchange is the preferred word these days. Oh, sorry. That's yeah. Sorry. Go on.
Gateway
exchange. That's completely fine. But anyway, for me, it's bidirectional.
Did you want to ask anything else, David, or is there anyone else want to?
And just following on from what David said, I think when we were having a chat about this before this discussion, we were a bit wary of falling into this trap that it might be seen as, we're mathematicians, we want to teach social scientists how to do maths. And I think that's what we were most keen to avoid, the perception that it was more like sort of an education and an awareness thing. We did want to push this idea that it was about doing the maths. I mean, have you seen proposals that have sort of been rejected on similar grounds? I mean, I can imagine it's quite a common thing in applied areas that you have some mathematicians who think they know how to teach some field how to do maths.
Yeah, no, but it can be across different fields. So, I mean, that's what we do. That's what our bread and butter is bringing together different communities. And it doesn't have, that can go across any 2 different communities you have. It's just down to the organizers to make sure that each community sees what they can get from the other one. But go back to what I was saying a moment ago, that actually, I think that you have a really interesting story to say to the mathematicians, to say there's, listen to us, there's some really exciting challenges that we're facing here. That's how I phrased it, was completely the conversation going that direction rather than going the other direction, actually. So,
I mean, I really love this idea. I mean, what you're saying, I think, is brilliant. If you can do it in the sort of way, it's like this story with this Hardy-Weinberg theory that they use in genetics, that it's actually us telling the mathematicians what these interesting problems are. And we're not, they're sort of new problems and they're not properly formulated in terms of differential equations or something like that. But there's all these crazy problems that are coming up, and they're coming up from this very diverse group of younger researchers who are working for Google maybe, or just finished their PhDs, and they've come up with all these problems, and then they're going to tell them to these sort of old field medal winning guys who are going to help them together with these young crazy people solve all of the problems together. I think if we can, does that
that's
sound
exactly
like
where I'm coming from. That's exactly where I'm coming from, David. I think that's exactly the story that you should be going for, and that's where the excitement is going to come about. And frankly, how many senior mathematicians does one know who have had all their own ideas exhausted because they've been working in the field for so long, and they just want something fresh and interesting to work on, and they don't know that what it is that they want, but in fact what you're bringing to them is what they want. Something to suddenly go, oh my goodness, actually somebody can bring some energy into me, and then I can share that out again and think how I can think about it, because I've exhausted what I thought of fresh ideas myself.
Thanks, Christy. I'm slightly conscious of time, and I think it would be nice today to do a little bit of brainstorming, I think. And I think if anything comes up, we can come back and ask you, Christy. So, I mean, how are other people set for time? Does anyone have to leave soon? Is anyone available for a little bit after 4 o'clock? I guess this is the kind of thing.
I thought that I would leave you in peace at this point in time, because I think that you've all the questions that you have had, you've asked for the most part, and then I'll come back on Thursday and you can either have more questions or not.
Yeah, I think I'll email you before then, because I think Thursday we're going to have some talks and we'll see how that pans out. So, but certainly if you are available next Tuesday as well, that'd be great to have some feedback.
Both are in my diary, and
great.
And I can be there or not, according
yeah.
plenty enough to carry on if I'm not needed. So whatever works for you, but basically just know that I'm here for you as a resource if you need me.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. Thank you for your input. Cheers.
Take care all. Bye-bye.
So, I mean, if anyone has to go a bit earlier, do you want to raise your hand? I can never remember how to do that. I don't know. Or
I just need to leave.
You're very keen on this idea of everyone going earlier.
No. I'm all for sticking around for a bit. I'm just aware of, I don't want to keep people longer than they're really available and so on. So, or or at least if everyone's gonna leave in the next half an hour, I'd like to know about it as well.
I mean, I need just to leave at 4.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. I'm the same. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's. I think what we'll do. I was going to break us out into different rooms, but I don't think we should. I think there's few enough of us, unless anyone else has anyone else?
No, I think this is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So then I'm gonna. So that there in the Sakoko room, there are a bunch of mural boards, but but I think it's probably worth just I'm going to share one of the links to breakout room 1.
Okay, John, while you're doing that, can I just, I mean, in case anyone hasn't seen, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's already been discussed on Slack, largely between me and David. If anyone hasn't seen that discussion, it may be worth having a quick perusal of that either now or, you know, before Thursday's meeting.
Don't do it now,
and
if you haven't already.
As John said earlier, like we'll sort of vaguely hang out in this cocoa room when we're not engaged in meetings of our PhD students and stuff the next few days. So if something suddenly comes up at like 11 o'clock one day and you want to email us, you can see if we're already just available anyway.
Yeah, it'd be great if people can drop by and have a chat. Right, so I shared a link to the mural board. I mean, these are just essentially whiteboards where you can put post-it notes on and write in them. I mean, I was just thinking of using it as a way to capture ideas. I mean, if people want to use it, that's great. But equally, we're recording this, so we should have a record of it, and I'll try and take some notes too. So apologies, I think you do have to sign in these days to Mural, but it looks like many of you are joining up. So, I mean, I've got 3 key things that I think we should tackle, but I'm also open to being flexible about how and what we do. But yeah, I think we should be thinking about the themes for the program, you know, what kinds of content should we be addressing, the structure of the program and the people. I suggest for today, given that we've only got 40 minutes or so, that perhaps we just focus on those themes, and maybe we can have a little bit of discussion about each individual kind of theme. So, I mean, if you are on the mural board, you might want to have a practice at putting a post-it note with your name in. It's worth noting that if you're using a mouse, there's a zoom setting thing in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's good to get that on a mouse or trackpad, depending on what you do, so that it's kind of intuitive as to how you move the board around. Or Jess, I know you've done this before, so it's good to move, get it intuitive how you move the board around. So I don't know, do people want to start? Getting the size right is interesting. You can like drag the corners and make things bigger if you want, and I think I can probably like make them bigger for you if you wanted. Right, so
I suppose what might be nice at this point, John, is, I mean, given that, you know, we've obviously spoken and you know, I've spoken at length with David. We haven't really heard anything from Jess or from Milena, so maybe if they have any comments on the program or any ideas for what would be useful in this program or would be interesting to have that they haven't been able to give us yet, then this would be a good opportunity to hear from them.
Or from Victoria. I know you might have heard something.
Well, yeah, I'm not here to channel Victoria,
yeah,
so.
that would be the most useful. It would be really useful if the 3 of you said something, because I think the 3 of us have had quite a lot of discussions.
Do you guys mind if you maybe go over the ideas? Because I mean, I started looking at them at the beginning, and maybe I'll give you a summary and then you correct me. So I saw a few themes. So one was about algorithmic bias and fairness. And then another one was about predicting human behavior, complex systems, agent-based models. They don't have to be disconnected in any way, right? They could be part of this. But were there more themes?
I think that's about right. And sorry, go on, Richard, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to agree. Yes.
Okay, so
I was going to say as well that, sorry, that there was notions of like parameter identifiability issues, and also around sort of universality of models.
Yeah, there was something about causality too, if I remember.
Yeah, I mean, the universality theme was really supposed to try and tie some of these other disparate areas together, so that the agent, I mean, because a priori agent-based models and machine learning algorithmic bias don't have a huge amount in common, but I think the discussion suggested there were some common issues around this identifiability issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so but the idea is to combine, so not see them as separate, kind of alternative ideas, but more to somehow connect these.
Well, I think it's nice if there's some sort of thin thread that links everything together, or at least, I mean, obviously there's the mass for social good idea.
Right.
I mean, I don't think there's a golden rule that says everything has to be part of one giant theme. But obviously, if there are connections between things, then I'm sure the INI will look happily upon that.
I mean, in general, reviewers hate it in anything if it looks like you've just parachuted it in your 3 favorite ideas and are claiming it's one grant. Say, for example, I've never done this and had it totally rejected very sensibly. It's an easy thing to object to, right?
Yeah.
Which I guess we want to avoid.
I mean, I think there would be an understanding that if you're going to do something for 6 months, it's probably going to be quite wide.
Yeah, multiple.
But yeah, you don't want it to be essentially 3 2-month programs that have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
So actually, this reminds me of like, so I was at I mean, I don't know, just for inspiration. So I was at a workshop at some point where they were looking at complex systems perspective on algorithmic bias. So it's kind of, is my summary of that, of the kind of the themes I saw. So of course it was kind of more computer science and ICWSM. So, but I, just for inspiration, I wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, I think we have to be a bit careful like that. We don't kind of, that it kind of doesn't become too much of a computer science theme. I think that's a bit of a danger here. So, I mean, I think because, I mean, given like, we have to kind of show somehow kind of how it contributes to maths, how it kind of advances maths and stuff. And I mean, in a way, there's of course a whole kind of area of maths that is already kind of, that is kind of attempting to solve problems like operations stuff. Of course, like it's kind of basically game theory, public goods, games and all that kind of thing. So in a way, I think we have to somehow link to that and, show like, where we can achieve some breakthroughs, like challenging some of the, common limitations that those models have, and that have been limited, like have been limiting their applications to actually solve really social problems. And kind of say, okay, so we want to go beyond. We want to challenge those, and think beyond the common kind of models and how they have been used so far. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I kind of in the Slack kind of noted was things that I know like from other areas, like for instance, like when I was to this EBD program. So one of the challenges that, I think mathematically that kind of people are struggling with is, of course, kind of the integration of data with those models, for instance. And I think that's kind of a more kind of common problem that, that can be kind of interest. And another thing is kind of optimizing, for heterogeneous objects and across domains. So these are, of course, as well kind of mathematical challenges in a way that are not easy to solve, but of course are part of the reality that a social world is, where you have conflicting interests, conflicting domains, and they're all interacting. And so like using just like very simple models often don't really solve those issues. That's from my side.
Yeah, I think if I was going to create sort of a crude parody of what I don't want to do is, if you read like Physical Review E or something, you get like this endless series of game theory papers that people churn out with like minor changes on their, agents on a lattice each every 3 months or something. And I mean, to use David's terminology, what we can sort of go all in for is this idea of like actually sort of realism and real engagement with the reality of the field that we're trying to model. So you don't try and model, a complex climate change negotiation by saying, here are a bunch of agents in a mean field or around sort of a lattice table that talk to each other in a pairwise way and have some Princeton's dilemma or public goods game and make a tweak and publish it. That you try and actually say, like, what's the difficulty in modeling this? Not why hasn't it been done because such and such who publishes on this hasn't done that epsilon change yet, but what's stopping us from understanding it in its real details. Obviously that's going to make the maths very hard. So, how far can we go? What level of maths is realistic to imagine working with? And then, you know, what mathematically would we need to be able to do to talk about this situation in a way that makes some sense of the real social realism of it? I mean, this is similar in biology as well. Like, what, you know, don't like model things as a, well, in mine and David's world, perhaps a bunch of particles floating around, but, you know, imagine these are real agents, real animals, real people interacting in real ways. What does that mean in terms of a mathematical model?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the chasm, right? Like, so I'm a essentially combinatorialist theoretical computing scientist by training, but I simulate things all the time, and I would much rather do some model that is analytical in some way, on which I can prove something about convergence, and in which I don't need to run several million hours of Amazon cloud computation. But the reason I don't is because, you know, me simulating every person in Glasgow coughing on each other or whatever it is that they're currently doing is simply not, I can't, there is, so far as we can tell, there is no way to do that can deal with the mess that is the data that's available. And in addition, there's nothing more analytical that I've come across, not to say it doesn't exist, that is then really, what do I want to say here? Sometimes you need to solve the problem, like you just need an answer to the problem. And I think there are outputs from these models. One of them is a statement that kind of, here's your answer, there's good support for your answer, all is well. Then there's one that just says, nah, like there's no signal in your data, I can't solve this from your data, whatever. And then there's a third one, which unfortunately my last 6 months of life has been, which is there's not enough signal in the data, but you need an answer anyway. So here's the best answer that we can come up with, and some sort of guess about how likely it is that we're wrong. And most of my more mathematical colleagues, or in particular my statistical colleagues, would look at that last one and go, yeah, that's just irresponsible, right? Like you can't be giving government advice on student returns when the outcome of these models are this uncertain. But the God's honest truth is that if we don't give them some advice, they're essentially going to pick advice out of thin air, which is surely worse. So I think this notion of like how to engage with the difficulty of these problems, but also engaging with this kind of hierarchy of answers is both impossible and important. Sorry.
We're supposed to have someone attending at least one of the days who gave a talk in Leeds about sort of ethics in mathematical research. And I think that will sort of segue quite nicely with that you
yeah, so is that, you know, Maurice?
Yeah,
because his perspective, I'm pretty sure, would be, Jessica, you have no business telling them what to do about student returns. It's a sort of I know this because I've encountered him in a couple of study groups. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think his perspective would be, if you are that uncertain, then they would do better to use their common sense, and you shouldn't be giving them any advice, which is like, maybe he's right. I don't know.
I mean, that's an interesting fundamental question, isn't it? Like, you know, is that the case? Like, you know, are we shifting people's, you know, shifting people away from a good solution, whatever that is? But yeah, but I think that is why ethics is really important in all of this. But yeah, I'm not really sure what the conversation with ethics looks like, because, you know, yeah, well, you know, that's something.
Well, I guess what it looks like in the context of the application, right, which is what we need to be. Can I ask, so maybe you talked about this before I turned up, but you all know about the sort of the practical process for who assesses this, and which kind of cranky person they're likely to be, and this sort of thing, as long as someone knows.
Yes, we did cover some of that, and I think the steering committee and so on. Sorry, Victoria, you sound like you wanted to say something.
No, I was just like suggesting, I mean, ultimately ethics is a kind of underlying everything else, right? Like, you know, because of course it's in any kind of question whenever it comes up, like, you know, how we use any model, or which conclusions we draw from any models is always like, you know, also an ethical question. I suppose if we just kind of make this as underlying part of course, any decision and any development in maths about how to contribute to social good, and I think it's that's how we should put it. It is basically quite fundamental to any
I think you're right, but I think that mathematicians already think in that way, and even I would go so far as to say data scientists, right? I mean, if you think about what's happening at the moment, I think Jess's articulation of the problem is a really good articulation of it, because like that is the truth, right? Many people out there, they just need an answer, and you can take data and crunch numbers and provide something. Invariably, there's huge uncertainty that you can't quantify on that, but yeah, and that's the point at which there should be that ethical discussion. And I think that in many situations that's not happening, right? Because partly because of our training, and yeah.
And I mean, like I presented it in kind of an emergency, and maybe emergency situations are a little weird and special, right? But I don't think that conversation even consistently happens in non-emergency situations where it could.
Yeah, we did say we didn't want this all to be about sort of like communication of maths, but there is obviously some aspects of this will have to be about communication maths, and one of the communication aspects is, what do people hear when you tell them my mathematical model says this? Because they're not necessarily mathematicians. I mean, we've seen from the COVID stuff that many people hear mathematical model and they think it's fiction, and other people hear mathematical model and they think it must be precise, and if you tell someone, well, this is the best answer I can give you with my mathematical model, you don't necessarily know what they're hearing from you.
Yeah, I think the problem is, of course, with uncertainty, right? Like, I guess it's very, I mean, people have generally like difficulties understanding uncertainties, and for mathematicians, it's very difficult to quantify uncertainties, like what exactly, what uncertainty means. And I suppose that's kind of is kind of the key really challenge in all those ethical questions as well.
This also relates to something David brought up. I mean, you shared a paper about this these measures of algorithmic fairness, and of course, if you just say, is this algorithm fair, then people hear all sorts of different things as well. So I mean, as long as you're using, maybe this is one of the ways we can make an argument for mathematical progress, is to say that these things need to be formalized, even if they get formalized to a level where we say you can't come up with a single definition of something. Because otherwise, I say my algorithm is fair, you say it's not. And in fact, both of us agree what the output of the algorithm is, but we just we hear the word fair in different ways.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about all this. I really like the idea of this, about sometimes you have to give a model, as Jessica was saying, that it's I mean, I think that's really important, because I think this, like when you're asked for advice, you can try the most advanced model that you want to do, or you can give a simple model, but in the end you have to give some advice, because the advice of some random self-proclaimed expert is probably going to be worse than your advice. So like trying to formulate that, I mean, even that is an interesting sort of mathematical paradox in a way, that your advice might not actually have any value, but actually it's not going to have negative value possibly, because the other kind of self-confident idiot who's going to give their opinion is going to have some sort of negative impact. If only it is that if they turn out to be right, they're then going to be employed to look at the next question as well. Those sorts of things. I mean, I was wondering if we can set it up as a sort of series of paradoxes in some way, that it's all about, we want to do good with maths, and as soon as we start trying to do good, we end up all the time in these different paradoxes: the fairness paradox, the sort of accuracy paradox, the will it end up being good for society paradox, like this trolley problem that I've become very interested in. Like each of those, we could set it up in a sort of series of those different paradoxes that come up when you try to do good in maths. And then going back to the discussion we had when Christy was here, I really like the idea of those paradoxes should be raised by these kind of young researchers who are just starting out on this, who are going to all those, the conference that Milena talked about, and there's this big thing at Google. They've they hired this AI expert, and then they just fired her a few weeks into her job because she wrote something reasonable about AI. And so we take in those sorts of people and we pair them up with some sort of old guys who've worked on these paradoxes before. Some, I mean, I was thinking about like David Wolpert, who did the thing with he did this no free lunch theory. And I see that like Timothy Gowers, I was thinking about this Fields Prize medal thing. Timothy Gowers, who has won a Fields Prize, is really into sort of social aspects of math. So you kind of pair up these pure mathematicians in a way with these excited younger mathematicians who work for the AI people to solve these problems. So there's 2 points I make. One is to set it up as a series of paradoxes, and the other one is that we're going to solve it by pairing up people with a lot of experience in those types of paradoxes with the people who are finding them in a very very real sense every day.
I really like that as at least, I mean, we certainly put it in the proposal. I think it'd be a really nice theme for maybe the first workshop or something as well, to say, essentially bring us your social paradox or your math social paradox, and we'll talk about them, and then we've got the rest of the 6 months to try and solve them essentially. I mean, another one that I can think of is this idea that if you can predict what somebody's going to do, the very fact that you've predicted it may change what they're going to do as well. So I mean, if you think about like nudge,
because that's what David Wolpert has worked on that type of thing as well. So yeah. But how does that sound to the rest of you? It's often never hard for me to get Richard to agree with me.
I guess I'm slightly concerned that we're all lined up on this, right? And it would be good to have like some opinions from someone who's completely at odds with it, or maybe not odds, but has a totally different view. And so I mean, I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to maybe for us. We don't have to do it now, but like have a think about who could challenge this. I mean, I don't know. Or do you think that's worthwhile, or do you think we should? I mean, it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear reinforcement of what we're thinking, and I think that goes to suggest that there's something to all of this. But equally, I don't know. Should we be? I'm just always wary of sort of filter bubble type thing or echo chamber.
Well, having listened to Christy, I mean, I would
just want to.
Sorry, Jess.
Sorry, no. What I was going to say is like we could we can guess, right? Like I can sort of run a mental emulator of a couple of senior UK mathematicians who would find this either boring or not maths, and we can think of what they would disapprove of about this, right? So one of the things they would disapprove of is just if you're dealing with a problem that is so messy that your data is no good, there's no interesting mathematics to be done. You simply can't do anything with it. That's one objection. Or that all the interesting theory has been done and that the gap is purely between trying to get your problem to fit the theory or get the theory to fit the problem, but that's not new mathematics. I disagree personally. I'm channeling a very sort of particular tweed wearing type of person who I've
Jessica's in Scotland, by the way. More tweed than in England.
Really? It's because it's funny because I was thinking particularly anyway.
Well, probably
doesn't matter.
Anyway, yeah, let's so yeah, I think that's a really good summary.
So I think based on what Christy said, I think I think that would be a mistake to try too hard to like convince her to take the devil's advocate position, simply because she wanted us to sound excited about it, and I think we are excited about it, and we're best to sort of just put the most positive face on. I mean, I think we should do this sort of mental emulation and think of what the most obvious criticisms are, but bringing people in basically to tell us that it's boring is probably not going to be enormously helpful. And I think also, I mean, ultimately, this is an application to run the program. I mean, when we get to the stage of actually running the program, it might be better to bring people in to make sure it stays on the straight and narrow. But at this stage, we should try and run the program we want to run. And if they say, well, that's not what we want, well, there's no point in us running a 6-month program on something we don't want to run.
No, good, a very good point. Sorry, Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down those lines as well. And I mean, I'm just glad that Michael left, because he would be telling us just now about how these math sociologists have to be involved. And
I would be
I
aware
kind
of
of
that.
want to dump them all.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful, because my first application got reviewed by someone like that, and there was some heavy criticism. So I mean, we received criticism for not being social sciencey enough by the reviewers, right? And so actually, I think it is something to at least nod ahead to. And I agree with Richard in that we should have a program that we want to do. I mean, well, I guess it's a case of, you know, I mean, I'm open to saying that, you know, if maybe the INI isn't the place to do this, maybe we have to do it somewhere else, right? I think that's a bit blasphemous here, but like, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, that is something for us to decide. You know, if we had to bend over to those requirements so much that we ended up having a program that we weren't, you know, well, we wouldn't put it in if it wasn't going to be one we wanted to be involved in. So, but yeah, I guess my point is that I think we do have to be careful there. Someone like that could be a reviewer. Yeah, I definitely had the response that Jess had before. It's all been done already. You know, sorry, the response that Jess suggested. You know, it's all been done already. This isn't anything new, and it came from.
This is just a Bernoulli-Bernhard lattice function.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Yeah, I've made that one up. I hope it's not a real function, but yeah.
I mean, I think there's a credible threat that will happen at some point. I mean, I think there's no. I mean, obviously, you want to take reasonable steps to avoid the bear traps, but I think also one has to realize that it may be that you get people who simply don't like the idea. It's also hopefully plausible that you get one or two reviewers who really don't like the idea, but you get other ones who really like it enough that the scientific steering committee decide to go with it anyway. I mean, that's what I was hearing from Christy as well. So I mean, we'll make the best application we can if we're excited about what we're writing about. But yeah, I mean, we should take on board, for example, you know, that other communities already exist and what they've done, and not pretend that we're starting from scratch.
Yeah, because there's a massive risk if we lean too much towards a community that we're not even in. You know, maybe Victoria's maybe a bit more in this community than anyone else here. There's a massive risk there, because then we have to get all of the big guys from that community in and get them on the application. So I think you know, I suppose we've said that, but I think we should just go all in on this is totally different. This is a very high diversity application where we have more than 50% women. We make sure we have 60% women. We have like a lot of ethnic minorities in the application. And then we have these sorts of old, nearly dying mathematicians to come in and talk to. So we've got that diverse angle covered as well. I don't know how we'll do actually all of that in the percentages that I'm talking about, but it should be a totally novel thing, I think. I mean, that's what I kind of think that we should try and go all in for. And then the arguments are sort of small arguments about if we've managed to get the sociology maths covered or not, don't become relevant to it, because we're trying to do something different.
Milena, I think we haven't heard from you for a bit. Is there anything you want to say about?
No, I mean, so I agree. I mean, I like the idea, David's idea of like whatever the division between the the theory. I mean, I'm not a mathematician, so I must say that I'm very weak on what would constitute a mathematical contribution, right? Like, are we talking about new theorems? Are we talking about optimized algorithms, or any of these, or I don't know, so that I'm a bit lost at this point, right? Like, and the other thing I wanted to contribute is that I mean, it's probably evident to you, but like I've been hearing a lot about algorithmic bias and fairness, and obviously there are other social problems there. So I just want to make sure that we don't focus too narrowly on the social goods we are talking about, right? So there is inequality, there is polarization, political polarization, right? So segregation. So I don't know if we want to narrow it in terms of the social aspects and problems, or.
So if we go on this line of, like, for example, the series of paradoxes or things like that, I mean, one of the things we can say is that we've already highlighted, or we've already identified a number of problems. We've got algorithmic bias, we've got polarization, we've got trying to predict human behavior and the ethics associated with that and the practicalities associated with that. But also we should probably be open and say, well, we don't know what all the issues are. I mean, we are, you know, many of us are mathematicians. We're going to be talking to mathematicians who aren't familiar with what all the problems are. What we want people to come in and say, all right, here's some broad themes, but here's a specific problem. Here's a specific social issue, or here's a specific problem that arises when you try and apply maths in my area, or here's a specific sort of problem that emerged. We tried to do this and it had this horrible negative consequence. You know, how can we fix this? And then, you know, we can show openness without having to specify everything that's going to actually occur over the next 6 months.
We can use the whole thing about the Newton Institute and all the thing that they're proud of, like, because I've been there for one of these programs, and it was amazing because they have this sort of big open area with all the blackboards and everything, and you're there every day over coffee, and we can use that in the proposal somehow. Just say that this is a proposal where we don't really know the answers, but by kind of hanging out together in these situations, we'll all be over with all this COVID stuff. We can actually start to discuss and solve these problems.
Just trying to, I'm doing exactly what I often do, which is go to meetings now and then start Googling for papers and things that people have mentioned. I don't know if any of you know a lot about, apologies if you do, and I should know about your background, I'm really sorry, about sort of fairness theorems.
Yeah, that was one of the
fairness
things I shared.
I'm really
I shared
sorry.
this because I think that's one of, no, there is actually, and that was really interesting because it came.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's, I mean, if we're hunting for, I think, so, sorry, is it Melina or Milena?
Milena.
Milena,
Yeah.
Neither of them. I'll try that next time, Milena. You're asking what would be mathematical output that would be acceptable algorithms versus theorems versus, and I think ideally over a 6-month program, both for the kind of, I think there's a breadth of output here. But yeah, I wonder if it sounds, David, like you've already talked about this on the Slack, which I have been watching. But that kind of area might be sort of a theorem candidate, right? Because I think if we identify these different areas we're working in, the likely output of those different areas can cover this breadth of things that will make it an appealing program. Sorry, I can't decide. So I've read a lot of the older fairness stuff, and I'm now just looking on the archive at newer stuff about kind of more modern AI fairness things, and I don't know any of the people involved, so without reading them I kind of don't know whether they're real results or just one exciting rando who has
No, I mean, they're probably all rediscovery of things that have already been discovered, but the thing is that these papers are getting 200 citations within a year of publication, and one of the big things is that it came from a study looking at racial fairness of algorithms, which then a mathematician proved this this fairness theorem, that you can't both be fair in the sense that you are fair in false positives for two different groups, and you're fair in that you have no calibration bias, that you're equally accurate for two groups. And this is a really simple, straightforward result, but it kind of had got missed. And I think for me, that's a sort of principle. Finding more of those types of paradoxes is something that we can organize around. And to address Milena's thing, because Milena's concerned that we just do about fairness, I don't think it should be just about fairness. It should be, there could be a list of these different things. You know, we can maybe have a paradox of polarization or a paradox of inequality. I mean, a brilliant paradox of inequality is just exponential growth, because if you have exponential growth, there's actually a nice article on this. If you have exponential growth, then you're just going to have, if you have a higher starting amount than the other person, you're going to have an inequality on an additive scale. And that's really just a simple idea which starts to explain a lot of what you see in inequality. So to take those types of paradoxes and say these are actually simple mathematical problems which kind of get neglected when you make all of, as Richard was going on about, all of these fancy agent-based models or the physicist models with this small variation of how the agents interact. That all gets lost in what are actually a simple processes. It's strange looking at you all here because I feel I'm just getting very overexcited and shouted a lot, and you're all just like looking at your screens. You're probably all reading the fairness articles. And,
I'm trying to capture, so I'm just putting things on like the mural board, and I've been trying to write things down. So apologies, and if I've messed up what you suggested there.
I envy your ability to get excited. It seems like a very long time since I've managed to get excited.
Really?
Are you not starting to feel the walls closing in? I suppose you don't. You're in Sweden. You can go out your house and stuff. So no wonder you're more excited than we are.
But this, I am really, really excited about. This, I just spend all of my time doing this. I've just been waiting for this meeting for like weeks.
I'm very pleased to hear.
I'm sorry that.
I'm pleased to do that. Yeah.
That's lovely. That's nice.
If I'd known, I would have got you to do more stuff.
Yeah, well, I've had to actually restrain myself from writing more on that on your Slack.
On Slack,
I was the only person writing things, so I had to.
Apologies for not engaging. Myself, but yeah.
I'm sitting there a Friday night after half a bottle of wine, thinking, then I thought, wait, stop.
Perhaps you should write it down anyway, and at least then we can use it to pull out some things. For
yes, I mean, do keep writing. I stopped writing largely because I hoped that if I feared if I kept writing, then it would seem like I'd just basically already decided what was going to be in the programs.
Conscious of time, so some people have to go. So thank you everyone for your input. It would be nice to continue having some discussions. So I'm not quite sure how the best way to, I don't know whether it's best to try and organize something either tomorrow or just wait till Thursday or what. Would it be good to set a time where we just touch base maybe and have a chat for a bit, or do people want to use the Sococo and just drop in and see any preferences?
I would prefer Slack actually.
Okay.
But can we maybe just get the discussion started? Maybe one idea is to post an open call for paradoxes, for example, and then see if people can contribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe just like to add, because David was so afraid of the old sociologists coming in. They have their own paradoxes as well that sociology is kind of battling with like since centuries, and where mathematicians might have some input too. Don't discard them.
Looking at the notes now. Yeah, but I like that idea of framing it around that, because then they can put in their paradoxes in a way. It's the spin glass model things that I'm worried about. It's that I'm worried about, not the sociology paradoxes. I think that's brilliant. What I'm worried about is I love making models of phase transitions in voting systems type of thing, which I've written papers about myself, so I don't know why I'm sounding so sarcastic about it, but I think we just want to move on from that, and we don't want to respect it. That's my point.
The thing is, there are many programs that I which are exactly that, so there's no point in having that. One doesn't have to respect or disrespect it. We just have to say that we're not trying to come up with a whole bunch of new voter models. Or like come up with new analytical results for that in 3D or 4D or whatever.
But paradoxes in sociology are brilliant.
Yeah. It's called like maths for social good, but we could bring it to the idea that like, what is the difficulty in doing social good? So it's not just like, oh, we want to like do some social good, let's make some mathematical models and apply them, but essentially phrase it around the idea that, well, we're not the first people to think that you can apply a model to society, but it seems that when you try to do that, things go wrong in a variety of ways.
So
you get these paradoxes.
Paradox of social good.
Yeah.
I need to go, guys. So I'll see you on Thursday, I
Great,
guess. So, and
yeah.
we'll have some talks then.
Yes, I think we'll have at least 3 and maybe 4. And the idea is there'll be short overviews of some topics, and then we'll have some discussion afterwards. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, see you then.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks
Very
very much. Does anyone else want to hang around for a bit or?